Hi, my name is Adam Shoemaker, and I'm rector here at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in downtown Charleston, back for another edition of Rector's Corner. And I'm very happy today to have with me the Reverend CeCe Armstrong, who is the associate pastor at St. James Presbyterian Church on James Island. And she is also the president of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry, or KEEM, a ministry that we commit to here at St. Stephen's. And Reverend CeCe, I'm very happy to have you to talk a little bit about the Justice Ministry. And my first question is just the basics. What is the Charleston Area Justice Ministry?
Well, first, thanks for having me with you. I am excited about being able to share news about KEEM. KEEM is a grassroots organization that started with noting that there are things that are unjust in our society, and how can faith-based organizations team together in order to combat those injustices. And so what the Charleston Area Justice Ministry is comprised of is several congregations and organizations, including faith traditions, various faith traditions that come together, and we use house meetings, the power of relationships, to determine what's really keeping folks up at night, late at night, what's really the problem. And then once that's determined, then that becomes the cycle that we start to do the research on how to make that injustice no longer an injustice, so that we may have a just society. So it's a really cool grassroots organization built on relationships with one another and each other, and it's power found in people.
And each cycle that KEEM enters into culminates with what's called the Nehemiah action. Is that right?
That's correct. At the end of the cycle that we go through, there is a Nehemiah action where the people gather together and hold public officials accountable for things that they have the power to change from the positions they hold. And they have been phenomenal events. Our most recent Nehemiah action had questions for MUSC regarding some health disparities that we have uncovered and researched and determined how to improve. And sadly, at the initial Nehemiah action, the officials did not show up. And so we were empowered as a people to send letters, to call, to email, to talk. Within 2 or 3 days, we had a meeting with that organization immediately, and things now are looking up for making life a little bit easier in the health disparities that we have.
How long have you been KEEM's president, and what does that role entail for you?
So KEEM has a system that has co-presidents. So I'm one of the two. Luann Rosenzweig is the other co-president with me. But of the two of us, I'm the senior co-president. Not that there's a such title, that's just how I've been in this is my second year serving in this capacity. Last year when I served with Brother Ed Bergeron. And so the two of us served together. And now this year I've moved to my last year for serving, and Luann Rosenzweig has moved into the co-president position. What that allows us to be our spokespersons for the organization in places and spaces where there is the need of a spokesperson, but not necessarily by myself. I am this, that, or the other. It's just that I bring with me the whole of KEEM. All the folks from the Charleston Area Justice Ministry come with me when I go to represent who we are in places and spaces. And so when we receive donations, or when we have gone to organizations to solicit sponsorships and funds for donations, I would go and hold the check, or go and be the one to shake the hands with those individuals who want to join and partner with us. So it's been pretty good and fun to serve in that capacity. And when letters go out, my name gets stamped to it. That represents, again, the entire group. It affords me the opportunity to go to places like city council meetings and press conferences. You may have seen Luann Rosenzweig at press conferences speaking on behalf of the organization. That's what the role itself affords for us to do. We work really closely with the lead organizer, Treva Williams, and all of the associate organizers. We help with the training, we help with budgeting, we help with the finances and what they look like. We help with the strategic team on what the goals are for our organization. So it just gives us an insight to the administrative work of the larger grassroots organization.
And KEEM's been in existence now, Reverend CeCe, for about 10 years, is that right?
Almost. I think we're at 8 or 9.
Okay.
We might be at about 8, I want to say. I know I've been here 6, but St. James, the church I serve, was one of the initial congregations that joined on board. And when I arrived to serve as associate pastor, I was told this is what we do. End of discussion. So here we are. Yeah,
Well,
but I think that 8 years or so.
I know KEEM's grown a lot over that time, and I know KEEM has taken on a number of pressing issues in our city. What are the pressing issues that KEEM is focused on right now?
Currently, it's the health disparities. The pandemic itself caused us to really reveal some things that were inadequate and unjust in our society. We have the housing issue that we are pushing for because, everybody was told to stay home during the pandemic. Some folks didn't have homes, so we revealed that. Trying to get the vaccine out. There are people who didn't have transportation to get there. How can you get to the place that you need to have a vaccine to curb a pandemic and there aren't any transportation, there isn't proper transportation. We are also still looking at and watching the racial disparities that happen through policing. With all what Charleston County ended up doing was adopting an audit that allowed us to see where the problems were and how we can address them. North Charleston now is coming on board with their choice. And so we're working through that. So those are just a few, because I'm sure I haven't named them all. We've been together 8 years, which means we've probably picked up a new issue each time. So I know there are others. The children, restorative practices, we're still looking at that on how to teach them and keep them from being statistics in the criminal system, because they threw paper at school or some other infraction that caused them to be separated from their educational experiences. We were able to get our children, our preschool kids, into better prepared for education by opening up those slots. And we've also had wage theft. We worked on that as well, that allowed individuals to recover and recoup some of the funds that were depleted from them unfairly and unjustly. So, yeah.
Being part of KEEM, it's so eye-opening. And as a priest and pastor, I've loved having my members be engaged, not only to be a part of finding solutions, but also to build relationships with other faith communities and to open their eyes to the way all of the issues that you mentioned intersect with one another. They're all interrelated. And I think being involved in KEEM shows you that in really tangible ways. It's really a meaningful thing, I think, for congregations to be part of KEEM, and exciting to see the ministry continue to grow. I wanted to ask you, I've asked a lot of people over the course of the pandemic in these interviews, how the pandemic has impacted the work. And I wonder for KEEM, how you've seen KEEM have to pivot and adapt to a changing environment.
Well, the pandemic offered some pros and some cons. Of course, the things that seemed to hurt us was that we couldn't build those relationships that we're so anxious to build in house meetings. So early in the cycle, as we prepare for an issue, we have house meetings where we go and we sit in each other's houses and we have these conversations. Well, of course, the pandemic stopped everybody from going anywhere to go in any houses. And so how do you build relationships when you can't even shake hands or talk face to face? So that was something horrible for us. And then also trying to navigate, how do you meet? How do you gather? How do you come together? Because we usually have what's called a community problems assembly that allows us to pick the one issue that we want to go through. Well, how do you do that when you can't assemble?
Mhm.
I mean, it just becomes difficult. The pros, though, that happened out of this pandemic is it made us become innovators. We learned how to use Zoom. We learned how to teach those who didn't want to be on a computer, didn't want to have anything to do with technology. We showed them how they could use their phones. We have spent some time teaching folks how to vote by QR code, where you could send in your message. So those kinds of things expanded for us. In addition to that, we would normally look for 1,000, over 1,000, nearing 2,000 individuals to come to a Nehemiah action in person. Well, because we were hybrid, we were Zoom and on Zoom, and also at the bin where people could drive up, like a drive-in movie theater. We ended up having close to 3,000 folks at our Nehemiah action, which has been just unheard of. And so that was a huge plus for us. We were able to still create community. One thing that I thought was really interesting, our meeting that we ended up having with MUSC was restricted. Only a certain number of individuals could come. Usually when we meet with any public officials, it's usually whoever we can gather to go, and we may have one spokesperson in the room, but we would have nearly 30 or 40 folks who will come in support of. They don't, we don't say much. The process is not for them to say anything, but to be physically present, to say that this is a grassroots group organization. Well, we were restricted for the meeting, which meant only 3 or 4 people could go, and one of the organizers. But the rest of Cajun, about 45 folks, gathered in a park, socially distanced, a good couple of feet away from the actual meeting. And so when the representatives went into the meeting, they were able to say, well, we're here on behalf of Cajun, and the rest of Cajun representatives are right out there at this side, this window. If you go look, you could see them all. And sure enough, there they were. They also took pictures of individuals on Zoom, indicating what the issues were and how the health disparities were bothering individuals. And they used those on large boards so that even though they weren't physically present, it was very obvious that this is a huge group of folks who want to see a change. And so so those things have been the good things that have happened. And I really believe, truthfully and honestly, that now that we've been forced to do hybrid work of doing things online, using technology, and figuring out how to do it in person, that's just going to make the organization even bigger and even better. So I'm kind of glad, if that's the right word, that we were innovative and used it to our advantage.
Yeah, I was at the Charleston County Council meeting the other night with members of my congregation and others from Cajun, and I noticed that there were council members present on Zoom, and there were people able to testify on Zoom. And I have found over the course of the pandemic that advocacy has been made easier. For instance, if it involves the state legislature, you don't have to drive all the way to Columbia. You can record testimony, or you can sit in your office in Charleston and come in via Zoom. But there's certainly some advantages that I'm sure will be carried forward into the future to enable a group like Cajun to continue to grow and expand. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how those listening in can get engaged and be supportive and most helpful to the justice ministry moving forward.
So there are quite a number of ways. One thing specific that congregants and parishioners can do is join the steering committees that are spearheading these issues. And that means being on the research teams. When they are going out to research what are best practices, how do we solve this? In order for us to do it as a collective group, it takes collective minds. And so if there is an interest in any particular issue, if it's education, if it's racial disparities in policing, if it's the healthcare, then join that committee to do the research that will help curb what's happening and how to develop what's considered a best practice. That's one way to do it. Another way is to invest. Cajun financially relies on itself. It is not a charity where others are just handing over funds and say, okay, go do a good job. It is owned by the people, and that's because we invest. So each person is encouraged to be an investor in this great work we do together. And so that's another way that parishioners can be a part of it, and making sure that this work is finished and done. And then finally, I think there are 4 major events that happen. There's the Community Problems Assembly, there's the rally, there's the Nehemiah Action, and there is the celebration. And so as members of this organization, those are the 4 major opportunities to be involved, to get involved, to show up and to be among the number. The Community Problems Assembly allows us to vote and pick what issue we're going to do. And it also gives room for people to join the research committees and the steering committees that will work towards that good end. The rally is just that. It's a rally, just like any other sports rally. Is to get you revved up to do the things. It tells you, gives you all the information on what we're going to do at the Nehemiah Action, who's coming, what we anticipate may happen. The Nehemiah Action is the actual event where we hold those public officials accountable. And then the celebration is when we get to celebrate the wins, whatever the wins were, whatever advancements we've made, an opportunity for people to make those investments so that we can begin the next cycle with great support. So those are very important events as well. So if anybody is going to do something, join the research committees, invest financially, and then show up at the 4 major events that we have. And that would be the best way to support Cajun.
Well, and for those listening in at St. Stephen's, we've now been formally a part of Cajun for 2 years now. And one of the ways that Cajun ministries grow in a congregation, really the primary way, is through the development of team leaders. And we've had Joy Smith and Lena Nandi, and we've just added a 3rd, Marty Adams, who will be picking up that work in the fall. So you can reach out to any one of those parishioners if you would like to get involved in St. Stephen's Cajun ministry, which will then help you to plug into the things that Reverend CeCe has talked about. I'm also just proud to say, Reverend CeCe signed this along with the other co-president, that St. Stephen's was awarded excellent participation in Cajun's 2020 investment drive. So thank you to all those part of our Cajun ministry at St. Stephen's who have already made the decision to invest. I just can't say enough about the importance of this ministry, and I look forward to seeing how it continues to grow at St. Stephen's. Every parish has a Cajun organizer assigned to it. We've had a wonderful organizer named Rose working with us the last couple of years. But if you've checked our e-newsletter, The Deacon, you will see that we've been assigned a new organizer named Amber. And Amber will be reaching out to some of you over the summer to set up times for her to get to know you, but you'll hear a lot more about her as we move forward. And at some point, I think as we move back and in-person worship, she will join us on a Sunday morning as well. Reverend CeCe, thank you so very much for making the time to speak with me, and thank you for your leadership of KEEM. I understand it's your birthday coming up. I hope you have a very happy birthday this week. And thank you for those who've listened in. I'll be back with another edition of Rector's Corner soon. In the meantime, stay safe and well, friends. You take care. Bye-bye.